Hey everyone, welcome to another Zwift racing video, and today I'm going to be talking about some mistakes that riders commonly make that they really should not be doing. And I'm going to be talking about what you should be doing instead, what these mistakes are, and how to avoid them. So the footage that I'm going to be using for this is the Zwift Insider Tiny Race footage, and this is going to be the races that happened on December 10th, and it is Zone 2, which is one of the most competitive races every week, and it brings around 150 riders for 4 short races that are done within the hour. So the first mistake is actually going to be one that I made, and I think that it is something that happens to me a ton, and I'm sure there are other riders out there who have this happen to them quite a bit. So you can see that I am pushing around 4 to 5 watts per kilo, just trying to stick with this group. And what you're going to see me do once I crest the top of this climb is that I'm going to drop a bit too far back, and once the descent actually starts, I'm going to be too far back and I will begin to lose the draft, which is really going to affect me in that finishing sprint, where it really is important to be closer to the front of the group, especially when the terrain changes and I am on a gravel bike and the rest of the riders are mostly on road bikes. So in this situation, I actually had the advantage because I was on that gravel bike, so I knew I had a really good shot at winning, but those shots were kind of ruined when I started to drop off towards the back of the group, which you're seeing happen right now. And this is when the gap just really opens up too much, and you really want to just stay in contact with the group, but not too far forward in the group, because then you will be exposed out of the draft and you will lose a lot of power, because it's really inefficient to be the one on the front pulling. So the best way to really avoid that is to just really hold a steady power and be sure to be very focused in the finishing sprint so that you don't end up losing those wheels, because it will be crucial to making sure you have a successful finish. The next thing that I want to point out is that you can see that towards the top of the climb, a lot of riders are starting to fall off, and you're going to see right when I get to the finish, there are a ton of riders who are just easing up completely, and they've really just given up. That is not the right thing to do, especially when you're in the top 20 of 150 riders. You can see that I'm passing these riders pretty quickly because they all went too early and burnt out, but you really just gotta give it everything, every last bit that you have left, and really leave everything out on the table, because you're gonna regret it when you see all these riders passing you right at the finish, because once you slow down, especially on a climb, you're gonna lose that speed really quickly, and you're not gonna be able to get to the line as quickly as you would have thought, because you can see that these riders, I would have caught them if I just had a few more meters of climbing left. The only way to really avoid that is to pace yourself well in the race and really just make sure you just give it every last bit of energy, because that's really gonna pay off in the end. So the next important thing when doing a Zwift race is to really know the course. This is a mistake that a lot of riders make, and when they're going into the finish, they don't actually know where the finish is. So knowing exactly where the race finishes will help you a ton, and you can do this by reading the Zwift Insider articles or just Googling recons of the route on YouTube. So just taking a look at this finish, you can see that a lot of riders didn't know where the finish actually ended. So you can see that most riders started their sprint a bit too late and were caught out of the draft in the finishing sprint. So the next common mistake that I want to point out is people using their power-ups in the wrong places. At the beginning of the race, around 50 riders used their power-ups as soon as they got the power-up, because they thought it was going to help them, but they really didn't know what the power-up actually did, and it really costed them at the end of the race, because the steamroller basically makes the rolling resistance equivalent to tarmac, regular road, so you don't feel any of that rolling resistance that you get from the dirt, which makes you go exponentially faster. The best way to prevent this is by going on Zwift Insider and reading all about power-ups. There are only around 8 or 9 power-ups, I believe, so it really shouldn't take that long to get to know the power-ups and know the different uses of the power-ups, because I don't see Zwift changing the power-ups anytime soon or adding any new power-ups anytime soon. Ultimately, this will help you get the edge on your competitors, and it will really help you just go that extra few seconds faster in Zwift races. throughout the entire next mile or so, you're going to see riders continue to use that steamroller power up, and really all they're doing is helping the other riders who know how to use their power ups wisely. And you can see that I'm still holding mine because I actually know what this power up does, whereas most of the other riders don't, because some of them are just beginner riders and some of them just don't keep up to date about the recent Zwift updates, because this power up was only added around a year or so ago, so you don't really notice these things unless you are in a race that actually has a steamroller, and most races don't have this enabled unless it is a gravel race. Something else that I noticed when I was looking at other riders' bikes were that there were quite a few riders who actually opted for a gravel bike on this course. The reason why I would never do that is because if you really think about it and you plan out what's going to happen in the race, you're not going to be using your steamroller until the finishing sprint, which is all dirt. And that's the only place that the gravel bike would really help you. For the rest of the time, all it's going to be doing is hurt you. So what you really need to think about is that when you're using the gravel bike on the dirt, if it's only around 30 seconds, the steamroller power up will cover for those 30 seconds. And if you use a gravel bike and you are using a steamroller too, that actually slows you down, because the steamroller power up makes the rolling resistance like essentially zero, and the gravel bike increases the rolling resistance, or does better on dirt surfaces than it does on pavement surfaces. So it really only harms you in the entire race. Now, if this was a different course and it was mostly dirt, I would definitely say go for the gravel bike. But in this scenario where there's only around 30 seconds of dirt and you have that steamroller power up to cover for it, I really think that using a gravel bike is only going to harm you. Now, in this finishing sprint, I am going to note some things that I did definitely do wrong, and those are going to be another few common mistakes, and I'm going to talk about how to correct those mistakes and really prevent them in future races. First off, you can see Chris Hosel from Watt Fabric, who is right there on the gravel bike, and he's the rider who I noticed using the gravel bike, and it really surprised me because he is one of the top riders, so he can easily win the race, and he definitely would have won the race if he did have a road bike instead of that gravel bike, I think. And right here you can see that I am heading into the finish, 0.4 miles left, and I'm caught towards the back of the group, which is kind of the start of my mistakes that I made in this finishing sprint. Ideally, I would have wanted to be in the middle of the group at this point in the race, and then right about here is when I wanted to actually start my sprint and turn my steamroller power up on. I turned the power up on a bit late, and I got my sprint off to a late start. You can see that I do pass tons of riders though, because I am starting from so behind, so I have a really good draft, and I get up to around 33 miles per hour, but it really isn't enough to make up that ground that I lost early on in the finish. So definitely staying towards the middle, I think, is the best, especially when it is an incline, and staying in the draft is really going to be that important. That pretty much rounds it out for the things that I think riders should stop doing in Zwift races, and I gave some of my insight on how to correct that and what the outcome of that would be. And I will probably do a few more of these videos, because there are a few things that I do not cover in this video because I didn't actually have the specific examples of it. So you can check out my YouTube channel for more videos about Zwift racing, including my insight on how to win a Zwift race and all sorts of fun videos like that. If you have any additional comments about things that you've seen riders doing that are mistakes, please leave that in the comments below, and I'll be sure to address that in my next video like this one, and I'll give you a shout out too. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe, and see you all next time. Ride on.